Why, hello there, and welcome to this video. My name is Leah. I'm a new progressive YouTuber, and I recently started doing a Wednesday and Saturday show where I talk about politics, the big news stories, whatever is trending culturally, all from a progressive point of view, so that I can try to use my political energy for good. So if that's something you're interested in, then you have come to the right place. So I usually break my show into segments because otherwise it's really hard to get any traction in the algorithm. So today we have a 3-segment show. And also, I do want to announce that I am going to try to work on some like trans lifestyle content. That's something that I'm interested in doing. So I have started thinking about that as well, and I'm not sure how I want to approach it or whatever, but I'm probably going to have a video about that kind of stuff soon. But we are going to go ahead and jump right into the first segment, which is all about Kamala Harris campaign watch. That's what I've been doing for my first segment of each show recently, is I've been covering like the news and updates that we have about the Kamala campaign. So we actually don't have as much news as I normally have had for this segment in the past, which is honestly a little bit refreshing. It kind of feels like we needed a little bit of a cool down period because Kamala Harris is riding like this huge wave of enthusiasm from her starting her campaign. Like, she started her campaign, raised hundreds of millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of people signed up to volunteer, and she has just had like this wave of enthusiasm. And I think that she wanted to try to like ride that wave as much as possible before any big news comes out, like her having to pick her VP. But actually, in terms of the campaign, probably like her last day to pick her VP candidate will be like Monday night. The reason why is because she's going to be hitting the campaign trail super hard starting like Tuesday, and she's going to be going through a lot of battleground states. So it's going to be really important for her to have her VP pick figured out before that. So I have an article here to give us a little more information. Kamala Harris is interviewing 6 potential vice president picks this weekend, AP sources say. Vice President Kamala Harris is interviewing a half dozen potential running mates this weekend ahead of a formal announcement and a battleground tour with her new number 2 next week. Her interview list includes Governor Andy Beshear from Kentucky, J.B. Pritzker of Illinois, Josh Shapiro of PA, Tim Walz of Minnesota, and Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona, as well as Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. Her deadline for picking a running mate is effectively Tuesday, when Harris will launch a tour of 7 key battleground states, starting in Philadelphia. President Joe Biden told reporters Friday that he has spoken to Harris about her search for a vice presidential candidate, but when asked whether he had advice for the qualities she should look for in a running mate, the president publicly demurred. "I'll let her work that out," Biden said. All right, so that's all the information that we really have about the interview process this weekend and stuff like that. Like, we just have a short list of the potential candidates and we don't really have any more information than that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go down the list here and I'm going to talk about these potential picks one by one, and I'll kind of give you my thoughts on them as a potential VP pick. But before we get started on that, I do want to say that it's important to consider like what Kamala Harris is probably looking for in a VP pick. And like, there's an obvious theme between all of these candidates. Like, they're all white men, and it's kind of a sad reality, but having that addition of the white male demographic to the ticket is going to be viewed as almost necessary for her and her campaign, because it'll help bring a lot of like the older generation on board and stuff. Now, on top of that, and this is all just guessing, by the way, they're probably looking for someone who's going to fit well within the policy position structure that they are planning for the campaign and the administration. So who the VP pick is going to be kind of important, because it might give us a certain idea of like where the Harris campaign is going to draw lines with their policy positions. So first up, we have Andy Beshear from Kentucky. Now, I just will admit I did very limited research before the stream. I basically looked up all their Wikipedia pages and a little bit of extra information and try to figure out where these people stand politically. So I might not have all the information. I may not be correct entirely about this, but I do feel like I have a general idea of where these people stand. And now, of course, if someone gets picked as VP, their policy positions could shift in relation to that pick, because like they could be influenced by Kamala, or they could be influenced to try to pick a more centrist like standpoint, for example. But we are starting out with Andy Beshear from Kentucky. Looking into his record, I would say that Andy Beshear is probably my second pick for the VP candidate. He's rather progressive. I can't really find much information about where he stands on the Israel-Hamas conflict, the genocide going on in Gaza. I can't really find too much information about where he stands on that, but that might be a good thing, because it might mean that he's not like a hard Zionist. Like, I feel like if someone is a Zionist, usually those kind of people are not quiet. But yeah, overall, Andy Beshear seems like he would be a pretty good pick. He kind of falls in line with Kamala in terms of policy positions. Like, they sort of stand in the same place in terms of policy positions. So I feel like he would be a really comfortable pick for the campaign. It wouldn't really be expanding their policy positions in any direction. It wouldn't be pushing them to the right. It wouldn't be pushing them to the left. It would sort of just be a very comfortable pick. Also, having someone from Kentucky could be a good VP pick because that could really help build support in that state. Next up, we have JB Pritzker from Illinois. He is definitely more of a centrist figure than Andy Bashir or some of the other people on this list. I wouldn't say that he's the most centrist person on this list, but he is definitely centrist. I would say that he would be one of the picks that I would be sad to see if he does get picked. That would make me kind of sad because he is a Zionist, an outspoken Zionist. And if someone is willing to support a genocide of an entire population of people, I just can't really support them on a ticket. So I am really afraid that we will end up with a Zionist on the ticket as Kamala's way of like both siding the issue, because she's sort of been more on the side of not being a Zionist. And if she wants to play politics, like hardball politics, maybe she'll pick a Zionist to try to win over some of those voters as she takes more of a stance against the genocide in Gaza. But really, I don't think that she should pick a Zionist. I think that should be a hard line for her. I think that if she picks someone who is outspoken against the genocide, then it says a lot about where Kamala stands in terms of hard lines for her. Like if she's not willing to let a Zionist on her ticket, then I think that says a lot. So yeah, JB Pritzker, I'm not excited about that potential pick. I really hope he doesn't get picked. And next we're moving on to Josh Shapiro from Pennsylvania. I am again really concerned about this potential candidate. If Josh Shapiro gets picked, that's probably worst case scenario for me. He is a hardline Zionist, and there are quotes of him saying that like Palestinians are too savage and too brutal to like seek peace or whatever, like basically calling Palestinians savages. It's honestly really disturbing. It kind of seems like he's willing to just let the Palestinian people get wiped off the face of the earth. So if he gets selected for the ticket, I'm going to be pretty upset. And next up, we're talking about Tim Walz from Minnesota. And actually, this is my pick for VP. Like if I could pick the VP, I would pick Tim Walz. The reason why is because he's actually pretty dang progressive. Like he has moved to become more progressive over time. He started out as more of a centrist figure and has moved to the left over time, but his vibes, his presentation and everything like that is very moderate. He gives off a comfy, moderate vibe, but his stances are all actually pretty progressive. Some of them are even to the left of Kamala. He's also not a Zionist, like a hardline Zionist. So the fact that he's not co-signing a genocide in Gaza is good to see. I wasn't really aware of Tim Walz before this potential VP pick thing, but I have since listened to him speak and seen some of his appearances. And I'm not going to lie to you, I'm really impressed with how he presents himself. Like he's got a lot of good charisma. And I think that he would help really bring in that moderate voter block by giving people those comfy moderate vibes while also being rather progressive. Next up, we have Mark Kelly from Arizona. I think he would be okay. I haven't done too much research into the policy positions of all these individuals. He seems all right, like kind of like moderate, pretty centrist, honestly. He seems to the right of Kamala on issues. Like there were certain issues I was reading about on his page where like he's not really progressive at all. He's really more of like a centrist bipartisan guy. And I feel like the time for that is not now. Like I don't think we need bipartisanship when the right-wing Republican Party is just like very extremist in their policy positions. So I'm not really looking for someone who's trying to reach across the aisle and do this whole bipartisan legislation thing. Like the Republicans are just not really functioning with good faith. They just kind of try to block anything that the Democrats do that's good. So I'm not really sure that we need someone more centrist. Like honestly, I would like to see someone to the left of Kamala or just as progressive as Kamala. I don't want to see the ticket or the administration pushed to the right at all. So next up, we have Pete Buttigieg, and he is the current transportation secretary of the Biden administration. I think he would be an okay pick all around. Like he's decently progressive. He's more of a centrist, but he's like more progressive than some of the centrists on this list. But I just think that optically, there's too many potential downsides to Pete Buttigieg. He was involved heavily with the Biden administration, but honestly, I'm just not too thrilled about a Pete Buttigieg pick. He is very much like kind of like an establishment show kind of guy. You probably know of Buttigieg because of like an appearance that he had on Fox News or something where he like lays it down really well. He's a good speaker. He's good at presenting himself, but there have been a lot of issues with supply chain stuff and like issues with supply lines. And that's sort of like what he oversees. And while not a lot of it is directly his fault because a lot of it had to do with COVID and issues with global supply chains, there's just a lot of room for people to attack him on that. Now, would those attacks be really dishonest if they tried to blame Buttigieg for all the supply chain issues? Yes. Does that necessarily matter if they kind of put together the attack ads the right way? No. Like, I'm just not sure that any specific voter is going to see Buttigieg on the ticket with Kamala Harris, and that's going to be an incentive for them to vote. Like, I think seeing some of these other less popular picks, like Andy Bashir or Tim Walz, I think that those would bring more to the ticket because you would see people from Minnesota or Kentucky, depending on which candidate was picked, they would like get excited about their public official being a part of the presidential process. So those are all the candidates and what I kind of think about them and where they kind of sit policy wise. I'm aware that nothing I just did was like really deep analysis or anything like that, but I don't really think that this needs to be thought about too deeply. I think this is more about optics and more about like where the administration is going to sit in terms of policy positions. Like in my opinion, it should be someone to the left of Kamala or as progressive at least as Kamala is, and it should be someone that's going to excite a voter base that might not have voted for Kamala in the first place. And that's why I think Tim Walz or Andy Bashir would be a really good pick. But yeah, that's going to bring us basically to the end of this segment. I am curious about people that are watching. What do you think? What do you think? Please tell me what you think. I'm curious about which candidate you think would be the best pick for VP and why. Let me know down below. Other than that, if you would leave me a like on the video, that would help me out a bunch. I would super appreciate that. Also, I'm trying to grow to my first 100 subscribers. So if that's something that you would like to help me do, I would appreciate your support in that journey. Thank you so much to everyone that has subscribed so far. I really appreciate your support. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and move on to my second segment. I hope to see you there, but I do just have one little favor to ask you before we get out of here, and that is for you to drink some water.